Trigger points and headaches. So earlier this morning, my client was asking me exactly what are trigger points. So I thought that I'd just make this video to explain to you the answers that I gave to my client, because you might be wondering the same thing. What are these things called trigger points and how do they relate to headaches and migraines? If you'd like to book in for a free consultation with me where we can look in depth at the trigger points that might be contributing to your headaches or migraines, then just book that in. My name is Ellie Lindsay. I'm a massage therapist. I specialise in treating headaches both in my clinic and with my online clients as well through coaching. And today we're going to be talking about trigger points and how those relate to headaches. So first of all, as my client asked today, exactly what are trigger points? Well, if you imagine that within a muscle, you have lots of fibres of that muscle. And every time that we ask the muscle to do something for us, so in other words, to engage, then what happens is those fibres come together and shorten. And then when we ask the muscle to relax, they lengthen like this. So what happens when trigger points form in muscles is that these fibres get locked together in that shortened position, and they're not able to go to that relaxed state of being lengthened where the fibres are separated. So they get stuck together like this. And then often what happens is once some of the fibres get stuck together, that whole area just becomes a bit sticky, and then other fibres start joining in as well, and that creates more of a problem. So trigger points, you might think about having knots in your muscle, and trigger points are a similar thing really to that. So sometimes people feel like, oh, I've got a lot of knots in my back, that kind of thing. Well, you're on the right lines really when you're thinking about trigger points, and sometimes they can feel quite hard when you find them as well. But the thing about trigger points is it was first discovered, or first at least published, back in the 50s and 60s by two doctors. One of them was called Dr. Trapezius and one of them was called Dr. Simons. And they published a manual with all of the trigger point referral pain patterns in. And since then, many practitioners, such as myself, have gone on to really put the pieces together for their clients and use these trigger points referral pictures and maps that these doctors produced back then in order to help their clients get out of pain. So I'm going to just describe to you a bit about what those maps are. So with the thing with trigger points is that often the pain isn't actually felt by the brain in the area of where the trigger point is. The problem is felt elsewhere, and that's a concept called referred pain. So we have a trigger point in one area, but the pain is actually felt somewhere else. That's the real key to understanding trigger points. And there are lots of different pain patterns that people usually feel. So if you have a trigger point in one particular muscle, we can use these maps and these images, and from that work out the kind of pain pattern that muscle usually causes. And there are many muscles where their typical pain pattern is to cause headaches and migraines. So when we think about referred pain, again, we're thinking that there's certain muscles with trigger points and the pain is felt somewhere else. So there's certain places where all these fibres have got stuck together and there's dysfunction in the muscle, but rather than that area feeling painful, we feel it elsewhere, such as in our heads. And the second layer to this is that once that's been happening for quite some time, so say if we have a problem in this muscle here, and that's causing headaches, after that's been going on for a few months or a year or something like that, then the place that it refers pain to starts to develop its own trigger points. and it just goes on and on in this cycle. So by the time my clients come to work with me, most of the time they don't have a problem with one muscle, because the problem has been going on for so long that they've developed a mixture of different trigger point referral pain patterns. So let me break this down a little bit into something that is a bit more practical. So there's a muscle called upper trapezius, for example, and this is actually thought to be the muscle that has the most trigger points in it for the everyday person. And when you understand where it is, then it kind of stands to reason, really. So it sits between our neck and our shoulder here. And on the screen, I'm just going to show you an image of the sort of headache that it can cause. So it causes this headache that comes up and around the head into this sort of between the eye and the temple. And most of my clients usually find it ends up spreading to around their eye area as well. Now, this muscle has a lot of trigger points in it often for people, because every time we raise our shoulders up like this towards our ears, we're asking that muscle to engage, to do some work for us. And the more a muscle gets overworked, the more likely it is to develop these trigger points. So that's one of the cause of trigger points, is being overworked. Let me show you this other image of another muscle. This one also sits in our neck area, but it comes a bit more forward here. It's called the SCM, and that causes a number of different style of headaches. So the trigger point referral pattern from this muscle is a headache at the back of the head, and really quite commonly, this is what I see with the majority of the clients I work with that have problems with the SCM, is it refers pain up and around the eyebrow area on one side. The other type of headache that it can cause is a headache that goes across the forehead like this on both sides. So that's another example of just the craziness of trigger points, and just having a problem with one or a few muscles can actually cause these massive migraine style headaches, really, because both of those images that I've shown you so far, those headaches are always really intense. They're not just the sort of headaches that are there in the background and you can just carry on about your day and function. They're intense, and you know about them, and it's difficult to get through your day, and they drain your energy a lot. So I'm going to just show you this other image here. So now we're talking about some other muscles in the back of the neck, and they can get trigger points in them. A lot of that can be down to our posture, and the referral pattern of those trigger points is this headache that wraps all the way around the head, and that feels like there's a headache just over your whole head. You can't really pinpoint exactly where this headache is. It's just your whole head hurts. It's not left, it's not right, it's just everywhere. And they can usually feel a bit of kind of brain fog, that type of feeling with these style headaches as well. So that's 3 examples of how muscles in the neck and the shoulder, when they have trigger points in, they can actually not be particularly uncomfortable. The muscles themselves, they probably feel okay, maybe a bit of achy if you press on them, but the pain we feel is somewhere else. So that's really how trigger points are a huge contributor to headaches and migraines. And practically every client that comes to me has usually been through every other possible solution trying to work this out, and then when they come to me, it's kind of like, oh yes, that's what was missing from the previous things that I've done, is I didn't understand this trigger point referred pain system. So it's really important to understand if you're suffering with headaches or migraines. If you'd like more detailed information on this, and for me to personalise what muscles might be involved in the headaches or migraines that you're getting, then just book in with a call with me. I would love to chat with you further on this.